What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
How are you going to guard against the bureaucrats undermining you?
Well, they're going to undermine. Well, I always say, so we have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries, because if you have a smart president, he can handle them pretty easily. I got along great with all. I handled them.
And on the topic of TDA, I've been investigating and tracking just one Venezuelan migrant over the past couple of weeks, a suspected TDA gang member in Chicago. Pedro Colmenares was deported in 2022 under Biden, yet he was arrested and released 3 separate times in Chicago. ICE tried to get a hold of him, but Sanctuary Cook County denied a detainer, and he was just arrested a 4th time. He is a murder suspect, and he was arrested recently for kidnapping and sexually assaulting a woman.
So a federal judge temporarily blocking President Trump's executive order to fast-track the deportations of alleged Venezuelan gang members out of the U.S.
What?
Matt Finn is in West Palm Beach, and he joins us now with the latest. Matt, this seems unbelievable. Break it down for us. Explain to us why we want Tren de Aragua back in the United States.
Yeah, so this judge ordered planes full of suspected terrorists to turn around to the United States. President Trump's proclamation of this seldom used Alien Enemies Act of 1796 says all Venezuelan citizens 14 years or older who are suspected Tren de Aragua gang members cannot become citizens of the United States. But yesterday, the ACLU filed a lawsuit claiming the Alien Enemies Act could be used to deport any Venezuelan in the U.S., regardless of whether they are affiliated with TDA. So a chief U.S. District Judge, James Boasberg of the D.C. Circuit, agreed with the ACLU and went against President Trump, granting a temporary restraining order preventing the deportation of 5 Venezuelans yesterday who were already in U.S. custody.
What?
It is unclear right now if the 2 planes that were ordered returned by the judge have done so. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi responding, writing, tonight a D.C. trial judge supported Tren de Aragua terrorists over the safety of Americans. This order disregards well-established authority regarding President Trump's power, and it puts the public and law enforcement at risk. The Department of Justice is undeterred in its efforts to work with the White House and Department of Homeland Security and all of our partners to stop this invasion and make America safe again. Now, as the number of illegal migrant crossings and illegal gotaways continues to drastically plunge under the Trump administration, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem posted this video online showing gates at a border wall closing behind her.
This is an announcement to the entire world. America's borders are closed if you want to come here illegally. We only want people in our country who love America and want to follow our laws.
The idea that that you would have a rogue judge in D.C. undermining the entire authority of the judicial branch by getting into a fight like this with the President of the United States, who absolutely has executive authority to do what he's doing, is, I think you could see long-term damage done to undermining the judicial branch's authority. It's absolutely amazing.
Imagine being a donor to the ACLU. Is this really what you want your money to go towards? To making sure that Tren de Aragua gang members. Now, listen, if he's saying, well, the judge is saying maybe this law can be used to deport any Venezuelan who's here illegally, and we want them to go through some other process, that's fine. But it's very clear that the people who were on that plane were Tren de Aragua gang members, And he basically said, bring him back. Bring him back to the States. That's crazy.
If I understand Matt's report, is 5?
Yeah.
5 people? You think they haven't properly vetted those 5 people to know they were already in custody? And the other thing, too, is if they bring them back, they're still in custody. It's not like they're going to set them free. And it's just, you're delaying the inevitable and costing us more money doing it to prove some point. I'm not sure. You know, we talk about judicial activism and lawfare. Shouldn't the judge, I mean, the Supreme Court generally, no matter if it's conservative or liberal, usually takes the stance of we don't want to pick it up until we absolutely have to. Right. We don't want to make this decision on behalf of the American people and the Congress and the president they've elected unless we absolutely have to. But I guess these lower court judges, I guess for them it's a way to make their name, maybe to create a legacy or get in the news. I'm not sure what their motivations are.
But there's a lot of elitism involved in this. You guys remember very clearly when J.D. Vance was interviewed by, I think it was Martha Raddatz, if I'm correct. And they were talking about Tren de Aragua taking over apartment buildings and complexes in Colorado. And she said, listen, it's just a few apartment buildings.
Flashback.
I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right.
You know, if I said,
and
they took over Bethesda.
Like, do you hear yourself? He said something like, his response like, did you hear what you just said?
Can you hear yourself, Martha? Exactly. They took over her little rich enclave in D.C., she wouldn't feel that way about it. But since it's these working class apartments that you're seeing right here, they don't care. Same for the ACLU, Charlie.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important point. It's why the Supreme Court has to step in and rein in rogue judges that do things like this, and they should do that. And as for the ACLU, it's amazing. And by the way, the entire judicial system, when you see things like this, you're like, wait, you're so concerned about the rights of illegals who are in our country illegally. It seems like you care more about them than you do actual citizens who are like tax-paying legal citizens living in the country, even immigrants.
Maybe the goal is to make them citizens and get their votes. I'm not sure what their goal is. Listen, you talked about if it were her little enclave in D.C. Georgetown even kicked me out of there for having a truck. Like they don't even let the metro there. Like you can't be poor and in Georgetown. Maybe if I were driving a Tesla, maybe they would have let me hang out for a while back then.
Meanwhile,
smugglers have now taken their operations underground. Along the banks of the Rio Grande, we actually approached a makeshift tunnel that smugglers had been using and building out. They actually even installed a pipe before agents were able to.
Wow, look at that. So it's like hidden in there under the bushes, and people could just suddenly emerge from that thing and then try to make it across the border. This will get them a lot closer, even if it's not a tunnel that goes directly from point A to point B. And apparently this particular tunnel was even reinforced with a drain pipe so that it wouldn't collapse and could be reused over and over again. But shockingly, some of the tunnels these gangs were using weren't built by the gangs themselves, but actually by our government.
What?
By the United States.
Then smugglers also are now using a drainage system in that same area that's now Border Patrol agents were able to block off with a cage. You could also see fresh cuts that were being made along that drainage system and the nearby tunnels. Clear signs that smugglers are testing weak points along the border. And smugglers never stop along this system. They're also digging out makeshift tunnels along that drainage system, just finding any entry point to bypass Border Patrol agents. Take a listen.
So these smugglers are now using infrastructure that already exists, and they're repurposing it so that they can bring people through that infrastructure like a massive underground pipe or sewer system into the country. And these guys are relentless. They'll exploit whatever weak point they can find, even if it's only temporary. For example, when security was light last year, if they saw border wall construction going on, they'd assault that position and exploit it before the work gets finished. This is why you see the smugglers sending scouts across to try and find ways into the country for their customers.
Meanwhile,
fighting back by appealing, fighting back by using the full weight of the White House counsel's office and our lawyers at the federal government who believe that this injunction is entirely unconstitutional. And it is for anybody who has a basic understanding of the law. You cannot have a low-level district court judge filing an injunction to usurp the executive authority of the President of the United States. That is completely absurd. And as the executive of the executive branch, the President has the ability to fire or hire. And you have these lower level judges who are trying to block this president's agenda. It's very clear. And as I just cited, I was appalled by the statistic when I saw it this morning. In 1 month, in February, there have been 15 injunctions of this administration in our agenda. In 3 years under the Biden administration, there were 14 injunctions. So it's very clear that there are judicial activists throughout our judicial branch who are trying to block this president's executive authority. We are going to fight back.